We are 9 weeks into the NFL season, and a lot has taken place in a relatively short span. A lot has changed so far in just a little over 2 months, and some teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles are off to hot starts, and barring a major collapse, both will be playing postseason football and will be competing for a Super Bowl title. But not every team is like the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles, and in today's video, we are going to discuss 4 of the worst situations in the NFL. We'll discuss how they got there, what they can do moving forward to get out of the situation they're in, and dive into a timeline that's realistic for them to seriously compete. Some of these situations are ugly, and we're going to break everything down in today's video. And a spoiler, I know a lot of people will be expecting the Broncos to be in here, but they are not. They certainly qualify for today's video, but I think there are 4 other teams that, like Denver, are in bad situations. And with that preface out of the way, let's begin. And we are starting today's video with the New England Patriots. The Patriots are 2-7 on the year and, believe it or not, have the worst record in the AFC. And there's a lot wrong with this team in this situation, but what is arguably the worst part about the 2023 Patriots is right now they would be picking 5th if the draft was held today. And they already have 7 losses, and we can call it what it is. This team is not running the table and going 10-7. But what particularly stinks for the Patriots is I don't think they're going to be worse than the 4 teams selecting ahead of them. Those teams are in order the Cardinals, Panthers, Bears, and Giants, and the Panthers pick belongs to Chicago due to the Bryce Young trade. I've been very vocal about the Patriots needing to move on from Bill Belichick, but this is not a normal situation, and firing a Hall of Fame head coach isn't the same as the Broncos firing Nathaniel Hackett last year after a disastrous season. It's just not. And I also think Bill is still a good head coach, at least from an X's and O's standpoint, and I don't think the Patriots are, for lack of better wording, going to outstink the 4 teams currently ahead of them, and that's why they make today's video. They're not worse than the Cardinals, and they're not going to wind up with the number 1 overall pick to get Caleb Williams, or even the number 2 pick to get Drake May from North Carolina. At least I would be very, very surprised if they did. And looking at the Patriots games down the stretch of the season, they can beat the Colts, Giants, and Broncos at minimum, which would put them at 5 wins, and you would have to think that would put them at the number 6 overall pick at the highest. Will they beat those teams is something else, as I am not confident in the Patriots beating anybody at the moment, but what I will say about the Patriots positively is I think they are a tier above the Panthers, Cardinals, and Giants, especially without Daniel Jones for the rest of the year, and that's not where you want to be. Not in today's NFL and not in the AFC, when your Super Bowl chances are going to have to go through Kansas City, Baltimore, or Cincinnati at some point. And we've already seen the Patriots get swept by the Dolphins this year and lose by 30 plus points in consecutive weeks to the Cowboys and the Saints of all teams. The Patriots' top 4 receivers at the moment are Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, and Ramondre Stevenson, and I really think the best option for them moving forward is to approach Bill Belichick and say, look, we need to go in a different direction, and we need to bring in some firepower on offense and let someone else take over from a personnel standpoint and make those decisions. I wouldn't feel great if the Patriots drafted a quarterback in the first round next year because they don't have great weapons to throw to. They opted to pay Juju Smith-Schuster instead of Jacoby Myers, and their difference in playmakers between them and the Dolphins and Bills is night and day. The Patriots' offensive roster is one of the worst in the NFL, and from a competing standpoint, by the time they could make noise in the playoffs, they are at least 2 or 3 years away, and where they are currently is without a doubt one of the worst situations in football. Next up is the Carolina Panthers, and this is for a few reasons. It's not just Bryce Young stinks, CJ is a great quarterback, and that's it, we're moving on. There's a lot more to the situation than just saying that. Yes, that plays into it, but it's not strictly that. And for Carolina, you traded a lot of assets away to go up and get your presumable quarterback of the future. And I respect that because a lot of teams will sit on their hands and opt to not do anything and let time pass, kind of like the Patriots have over the last few years. But when you go up to get Bryce Young, you did not put him in a great situation or anywhere close to what he can do to maximize his potential as an NFL quarterback. He's played 7 games as an NFL starter and is 1-6, which I get. You're a rebuilding team and losses are going to be a part of the process. but he has 0 games above 250 passing yards, he has just 8 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions, and has a passer rating of 77.1. They have a few difficult games on the schedule still to play, like when they play the Cowboys, Jags, and the Bucs defense, and I worry about how Bryce is going to hold up in these games. Dallas's pass rush will eat the Panthers' offensive line alive, and I expect that game to get out of hand pretty quickly because Dallas can and will jump on bad teams, and we've seen that through the first half of the 2023 season, and I was never expecting Bryce to come in and light it up early on, but I was hoping through 7 starts he would be in the 1,700-yard, 11 touchdown to maybe 4 or 5 interception range. But Bryce is struggling, and it's not due to just him. The Panthers are in a very bad situation now as a franchise because they are both draft pick poor and asset poor, meaning there's not a lot they can do to help Bryce out, at least in the time being. I wanted them to trade Brian Burns to get a first-round pick back, and there was a trade last year that would have sent Burns to the Rams for a 2024 and 2025 first, along with a second-round pick in the trade. And the Rams' 2024 first is currently number 6 overall, and sure, Marvin Harrison Jr. might not be there for the Panthers at number 6, but Malik Neighbors probably would be. Rome Odunze, who I absolutely love, would be there, and I look at the Panthers' moves both in what they have done and what they have not done over the past really 18 months to 2 years, and think how much of a hole they've put themselves in. I know we can do this with every team, but they traded their 2022 second-round pick and 2 other picks for Sam Darnold. And for a brief period in time, we could have had DJ Moore, Christian McCaffrey, and George Pickens all in the same offense. And having George would certainly go a long way in helping Bryce's development. And unless they sign Brian Burns to a long-term deal and trade him, which is referred to a sign and trade, I really worry about Bryce's development because they have one player over 250 yards receiving through 8 games, and it's a 33-year-old Adam Thielen. Jonathan Mingo was a top 40 pick and has 20 receptions in 8 games. And when you look at the situation and realize the Panthers could have 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick from a team that was already not good in the Rams and desperately trying to cling on to a Super Bowl run, combined with the fact your number 1 overall picks team stinks, this situation is awful. Oh, and to make matters worse for the Panthers, everywhere you turn, you get reminded that CJ Stroud is on his way to winning the Rookie of the Year award, a guy you passed over. To me, this team is at least a good 2 years away from competing, if not further. Next up is the New York Giants, and this situation for them could change in a big way if they end up with North Carolina's Drake May. But for now, I worry about their future for several reasons, and Daniel Jones is one of them. Even without the ACL injury, this worries me because of the contract they gave him. And after last year with the success the Giants had and the fact they won a playoff game, I thought the Daniel Jones contract extension was inevitable. They had a good head coach who maximized the talent out of his players, and they certainly didn't look like the team of the future by any means, but they looked like they had 2 of the most important positions in football locked in, head coach and quarterback. But Daniel took a step back in 2023 when he played and had 2 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, and outside of a second half against the Cardinals, who could very easily finish with the number 1 overall pick, it's been a very bad season for the Giants. Their weapons are awful for Daniel, or now Tommy DeVito, to throw to, and that's been a big problem for them in the Brian Daboll era. And during the team previews back in July and August, I titled the Giants team preview, "The Giants Are in a Tough Situation," with the thumbnail captioned "Uphill Battle." And the uphill battle was referring to the big brothers in the division in Dallas and Philly, and discussing how the Giants roster, compared to those 2 teams specifically, is nowhere close, and that was the big concern I had with this team moving forward. I still have that concern 3 months later, and this is why they make today's video. If we were to manage this team like a Madden franchise and have the best interest in the team moving forward, I would love nothing more for the Giants to lose the rest of the way and get a top 2 pick. But that's a lot easier said than done because guys aren't going to purposely lose, and they're not going to risk their bodies every single week with the goal of losing in mind, nor should they. And nor should they do that knowing there's a high chance they will have to move their families at the end of the year if the tank would be successful. I really think Brian Daboll is the guy, and I think he can be the head coach of the Giants for a long time if he's allowed to get his quarterback at the future. Business in the NFL is an entirely different thing, and that's a big reason why we've seen Daboll raging on the sidelines this year, because he he knows money talks, and the Giants would probably choose Daniel Jones over him if push came to shove. He also knows Daniel Jones will have a lot longer of a leash as a quarterback than he will as a head coach, and from a competitive standpoint for the Giants, they need their quarterback in the future. And I think if they can get Drake May from North Carolina along with some weapons that's not bottom 5 caliber, I think they will be competitive, as in competing with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys midway through the 2025 season. But this roster at the moment is awful, and their 2023 season has been a nightmare. From a 40-0 game, from Evan Neal asking if fans flip burgers, from their starting quarterback being done for the year, and everything in between, this is bottoming out as an NFL franchise. We're living through the bad days of the New York Giants, but allowing a great offensive-minded head coach and Brian Daboll get to choose his quarterback of the future would be the start of building the team back up. Next up is a team that's technically in the playoff race, and it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We discussed them a few weeks ago, but this team started out 3-1, and when they were 3-1, my thoughts on this team weren't that they were Super Bowl contenders by any means, but that they could get to 9 or 10 wins and win the division, because as we know, the NFC South isn't good, and basically if they didn't lose games, they could rack up a lot of wins over teams like the Falcons twice, the Panthers twice, the young Packers, the Colts, and you get the point. I didn't think they'd be very scary by any means, but more so the result of an easy schedule. And in 2 of the past 3 games, they've lost to the Falcons and the Texans, both games I thought Tampa could win. And in both games, they gave up over 400 yards of offense, and they looked ugly in the process. And especially in the Texans game, as CJ Stroud stamped his name on the Rookie of the Year award. There's times in both life and the NFL where you realize it's too late, and not to get too philosophical, but now is the time to rebuild for the Bucs. Not in 2 years after you waste the rest of Mike Evans' prime, but now. The Panthers are going through shit of their own. The Saints, in my opinion at least, will never be true Super Bowl contenders with Derek Carr as their quarterback, and the Falcons have their own problems, and Arthur Smith himself is a big problem because he sometimes flat out refuses to give top 10 picks the football, and that leaves Tampa in a situation where they can say internally, do we want 8 or 9 wins per year, or do we want to really bottom out one year and have 4 wins and try and get a quarterback and head coach of the future? And I don't think they're going to. Todd Bowles clearly isn't the answer, and by the way, this has nothing to do with Baker Mayfield because he has played good football for the Bucs in 2023, but I don't think Baker is the guy you want to hitch your wagon to for the next 4 years and give him a long-term deal. This organization went over a decade without a playoff appearance, and while I don't think it'll be that long again for them, now is the time you want to rebuild. Not in 4 years when the Falcons may have their guy and take control of the NFC South right in front of you. There is no clear team of the future in this division, which is unique relative to the other 7 divisions across the league, and I think Tampa is unfortunately going to fumble this opportunity, and that's why they made today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 27% of people watching are subscribed, and your subscription is very much appreciated. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.